What's up, guys? LQ here with the LQ review, and I just got out of my screening of Spider-Man Far From Home. So let's talk about it. This is going to be a spoiler review. I am going to include spoilers in this, so if you haven't seen it, you might want to click away. So there's your warning. If you're going to stick around, either you've seen Spider-Man Far From Home or you just don't care about spoilers. So let's talk about it. So this movie is very closely tied to Avengers Endgame. It's a direct sequel to Avengers Endgame. Yeah, it's a sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming. It's also a direct sequel to Avengers Endgame. What I love about the beginning of this movie was the memorial video that Betty Brant and I forget the other guy's name, that they made of the Avengers. Iron Man, Captain America, Scarlet Witch, the Vision, talks about how, you know, they're gone but not forgotten. And when you speak about that, when you talk about what happened post-snap, and by the way, they don't call it the snap here, they call it the blip, which I thought was really funny. Because not everybody knows that it happened by a snap. All that they know is that people blipped out. But what was cool about it was you saw some flashback footage of people disappearing. We saw flashback footage of a basketball game where people disappeared during a basketball game, and that was pretty cool to see some reactions, to see the way that people just kind of dusted out. And then we got to see how some people reappeared, and basically they just reappeared. And it was funny, some band members reappeared on the stage during a basketball game. So that was really funny. You know, just seeing how the snap or the blip affected things on both sides of the spectrum, when they disappeared and when they reappeared. That was really cool, and that kind of answers some questions as how people reacted to it. It also talks about how a lot of people have moved on. You know, a lot of people were, you know, for everybody that blipped out, 5 years has passed for everybody else, but the people who blipped out, hardly any time has passed. So you look at Spider-Man, MJ, Flash, Ned, Betty, you know, they all blipped out. So, you know, all of Spider-Man's core supporting characters just happened to blip out, but that's forgiven because it was it's a good movie and whatnot. So you can forgive some of the unbelievable things when the movie's really good. And by the way, Spider-Man Far From Home is a really good movie. So they immediately set up the fact that Spider-Man is still heartbroken over losing Iron Man, Tony Stark. And he has bequeathed Iron Man's glasses. Those glasses that Tony Stark always wore in all the movies. He's kind of bequeathed those. And he gives... Tony gave them a name. Edith is what they're called, is what those glasses are called. And I thought that was a really neat gag because it's an acronym for Even Dead, I'm the Hero. So that was really cool. But yeah, it was... So, I don't know. I like the fact that they're setting Peter up to be the next head person in the MCU. You know, the MCU is going to revolve around Peter Parker, much like the first three phases revolved around Iron Man. I like that. I think that's fun. I think that's a good idea. I wish that they would start moving away from him being Iron Man Jr., from him being the Iron Spider, Iron Heart, or, you know, this was very much a Iron Man successor movie. I'd like to see them start to move Spider-Man away from that a little bit. And I get it. Iron Man's such a hot property that having a movie that has direct ties to Iron Man helps sell the movie. I get that 110%. But at the same time, Spider-Man is a great character in his own right. He's one of the most popular characters in the history of comic books, him and Batman. It's Spider-Man and Batman. So Spider-Man he's a character that's able to hold his own without having to rely on the legacy of Tony Stark, and I'd like to see them start to move away from that a little bit. So let's talk about the quality of this movie a little bit. I'm going to talk about Mysterio. Nick Fury. I'm going to talk about all that. But first, let's talk about the quality of the movie a little bit. This was not a perfect movie. You know, I've seen lots of people online say, it's the best Marvel movie ever. It's the best Spider-Man movie ever. All right, it's not the best Marvel movie ever. It's not even in the top 5. And it's not the best Spider-Man movie ever. I'd probably put it number 3. Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and Into the Spider-Verse were both better movies than this. That being said, this is still a darn good movie. It does have its problems, though. The first act was slow. The first act was slow. Not a lot happened in the first act. It was a lot of catch up and setup in the first act. So playing catch up after Endgame and setting up the new storyline, the first act was a little slow, and there's a lot of exposition. And exposition is fine, character development is fine, but it wasn't always presented in a way that was as interesting as it could have been. You know, this is a Marvel movie, so we hold it to very high standards, or at least I hold it to very high standards. And the first act was just slow. It was kind of meandering and a little hard to get through. Once you got into the second act, once you got into the elementals, once you got into Mysterio, once all that stuff started really getting heavy into the plot, then the movie picked up and the movie was a lot better. The movie at that point became a very good movie, but the first act bogged it down, to be sure. Mysterio was a very good bad guy. Quentin Beck. They only call him Mysterio a few times in the movie. Well, they call him more than a few times. It's a name that was coined by Spider-Man's friends, and he kind of ran with it, and he told Quentin Beck, you know, my friends call you Mysterio. And then the name just kind of stuck. But he was a good villain. He was not a villain that I would put on par with Vulture. Vulture is one of the best villains in the MCU. I wouldn't put Mysterio up that high. Once you get past his gadgets, get past his technology, which is granted Stark technology, and you find out that he works with a group of disgruntled Stark employees. So he's using Stark technology to create these illusions, to create the illusions of the elementals, to create the illusions of his powers, to even create his action. You know, when he's up there flying around, that's not really Mysterio. That's just an illusion. So creating all of these illusions, once Peter's able to get past the tech and get past the fact that this stuff isn't real, Mysterio becomes a much easier villain to deal with. And like I said, the illusions were difficult to get past. But this movie also helped him develop his spider sense, which I thought was funny that they called it his Peter tingle. But we saw full development of the spider sense in this, and he used it at the end of the movie when he was in Mysterio's illusions. And I thought that was a great use of a storyline that they started to introduce in Infinity War. You know, they teased the spider sense in Infinity War, and then they obviously have built on it to the point where now in Endgame, or in Far From Home, he's honing it. He's honing his spider sense. So I like that aspect of the story a lot. So yeah, Mysterio was a good villain. He's one of the better villains in the MCU. I wouldn't put him up there with Thanos or Vulture or Loki. You know, he's not top tier, but he's a very strong villain just in terms of his motivations. I love how they tied it back to Civil War. You know, the Tony's therapeutic device called Barf was actually developed by Quentin Beck. So I love how they tied it back, and I love how Marvel has all these toys in their history, all these things in their history that they're able to call back on. Even some of the employees appeared in previous movies. You know, the one employee appeared in Iron Man 1. So I love how they're calling back, and they're getting the same actors, and they're using the same, they're pulling from the same storylines that we know and love. I love that. That's something that Marvel does extremely well that DC hasn't done well at all, and that's something that makes Marvel stand out, and it makes them stand above. As much of a DC fan as I am, and as far as the comics are concerned and the properties, I'm more of a DC fan than a Marvel fan. I always have been. But you can't deny that Marvel is firing on all cylinders right now. They're making everything work, and everything they're touching is turning to gold, and DC is just having a hard time keeping up. I don't hate the DC movies. I like most of the DC movies. But they're not Marvel quality. And they're not Marvel quality because Marvel is able to do stuff like this. Tying back to previous movies to create great characters and great storylines. Spider-Man supporting cast was present, and you know, they did their thing. It was really well done. The actor that plays Ned does a good job. Ned is one of those characters. He's kind of a bad friend, but he's also endearing, right? I don't want to call him a bad friend. He's just kind of a selfish friend. Ned is a selfish friend, but he's also endearing. You can't help but like him despite his flaws, despite his quirks. Flash obviously bears zero resemblance to the Flash in the comics, and I have a hard time getting behind this version of the Flash. But they were able to use him more in this movie, and he's another character that became a little more endearing in this movie, and you even felt some apathy towards him. Because it's becoming more and more obvious that he's got a rough home life, so you're feeling some apathy towards Flash, and I look for his character to expand even more in the next movie. As far as Zendaya's MJ is concerned, you know, Zendaya and Tom Holland have great chemistry together. I think Zendaya is a fantastic actress, and you know, what's unfortunate about this character is she's kind of fallen into some superhero romantic lead tropes, you know, covering for the hero, you know, kind of being a hero sidekick and whatnot, swinging along or flying along, whatever you want to call it, with the hero. There is some romantic tropes in there, but Zendaya is doing a pretty good job of making MJ a strong character that can stand on her own, even though she doesn't have a lot to do other than wonder what the hero's doing, or follow the hero around, or cover for the hero. Despite all that, Zendaya is doing a good job of making MJ at least a complex character. Samuel L. Jackson was great as Nick Fury, as he always is. Kobe Smulders. This is probably the most that Maria Hill has ever had to do in any Marvel movie, and it was nice having her there. It was not, you know, she didn't have a lot of dialogue, didn't have a lot of action sequences, but she was a constant presence in the movie. She was always there, and it was nice having that tie-in to all the previous movies. You know, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury is that tie-in, but having Maria Hill there with Nick Fury, that's the kind of thing that just helps to tie a bow on it and say, yeah, these movies, this exists in one big world, one big universe, and Maria Hill is a constant part of that. So, you know, it's nice having Kobe Smulders' presence there. She does a good job of playing Maria Hill, and she's another character I look forward to seeing more from in the future. Speaking of relationships, though, as you know, you got Zendaya and Tom Holland. You also have another very, very fun, very quirky, very endearing relationship in the MCU now in Happy Hogan and Aunt May. This is a really fun relationship. You know, it looks like Happy's falling in love with Aunt May, and Aunt May called it a summer fling. This is all a lot of fun, and this is the most I've ever liked Happy. You know, I've loved him in the Iron Man movies. He's been a great character in the Iron Man movies, but in this movie, he was somebody that you rooted for as a person. You know, you wanted Happy to get the girl. You wanted Happy to develop a somewhat of a fatherly relationship with Peter Parker as well. You wanted to see these relationships expand that Happy's involved in. So Happy just adds a certain amount of, again, connectivity to the Iron Man movies, connectivity to the Avenger movies, but also just something fun, a new element in a Spider-Man movie that we haven't seen before. So, bottom line, I really like Spider-Man Far From Home. I put it up there with, like I said, it's not quite as good as Spider-Man 2. It's not quite as good as Into the Spider-Verse. I'm still not sure which one I like better between Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm going to have to think about that, let that stew a little bit, but I really like Spider-Man Far From Home a lot. The post-credit scenes were great. One of them was played for laughs. One of them changes the Spider-Man movies moving forward. You know, it was great having J. Jonah Jameson back, and that's going to obviously play a big role in the next movie, as J. Jonah Jameson has pinned the elementals, the drones, and even the death of the great hero Mysterio. He pinned it all on Spider-Man, and has officially declared Spider-Man a menace, but has also revealed Spider-Man's secret identity to the world. So that's going to be huge moving forward. The Nick Fury and Maria Hill as Skrulls post-credit scene obviously was played for laughs, but that's going to also have some, I think that's going to have some repercussions moving forward also. I really do. I really do. I don't think they would have showed us the Skrulls just for a laugh. I think that's going to be something that's going to play out in the future. So yeah, this is a really good movie. Jake Gyllenhaal, by the way, killed it as Mysterio. Just a great caliber, just a great actor. It's great that Marvel keeps getting these caliber actors in their movies. And while Mysterio was not what you would call a sympathetic character, Jake Gyllenhaal was able to play him in a way where you understood his motivations. You understood why he had a beef with Tony Stark, Stark Industries, and superheroes in general. So yeah, this movie was a little bit The Incredibles. It was. Mysterio was Syndrome. Mysterio was Syndrome. You know, he created this carnage so he could be the hero that saved the world from it. And then it all comes crashing down when the heroes figure out what's going on. But it's okay to take concepts that we've seen before and use them in a way that makes it new. And that's what Spider-Man Far From Home does. You know, we've seen this concept before, but they did it in a way that it felt new, it felt fresh. So yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I give this movie an A-, only probably because the first act kind of did bog it down a little bit. That keeps it from being an A or an A+, but an A-, still a great, solid movie, a lot of fun, a great summer fun, great way to spend $15. Go watch the movie and have a great time. So that's my review for Spider-Man Far From Home. What did you think of Spider-Man Far From Home? Let me know in the comments down below. And thank you so much for being here at the LQ Review. Hey, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers. I'm sitting at 85. You can help me by hitting that subscribe button. And I appreciate you being here where we talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we love to talk about. And until next time, we'll see you later.